Alrighty, so I thought while we're waiting for all this stuff to actually happen, let's see what this one, yeah, there we are. Alright, let's get this up here for you. And this one, right here. Alright, so I thought that we would go over fundamentals in a really quick video. The node is still updating. It's been running all night. We're on 217 now. We got like what? It's 290. So yeah, a little ways. Probably finished by tonight. So roughly 24 hours it's gonna take to synchronize the node completely. Um, so let's go over what kind of workflow you're looking at when you're trying to do a site that does automatic minting and sending of NFTs. So you need a way to check for new transactions on the wallet that you're doing the minting to. So you're going to be accepting a payment from a customer, and when that amount is received and is validated as the correct amount, it mints an NFT and then sends it back to that person. There's a couple extra steps inside there, and that's what this workflow is going to kind of cover. So the first part, which is not on here, is the payment. So the payment is going to be a value that you would want to charge for your NFT. Let's say it's 5 ADA or 10 or 25 or 100, whatever. And then you have to have a decimal point. So they usually call this the gas fees or whatever for it. Normally it's about 1.5, 1.7 ADA, something like that is usually what the or 0.15 ADA is what the actual amount is. But the extra decimal places is where you can actually randomize stuff and get a specific value. So essentially what you do is you have a website, could be a React site, whatever. React makes it a little easier, but if you're doing like a WordPress site or a regular site or whatever, what you could do is you could have a button that sends a request to your system, your API that you're making to do all this stuff, and it says, "Hey, I got a customer that wants to mint an NFT. He wants to buy something, right?" You can pass any details for that product. If it's like you got a whole bunch of a list of NFTs that they want to buy, you could send that particular one off to them, off to your API, so it knows what kind to mint, all that kind of stuff. That's up to you. If it's just a random generated kind of an image, you could, like you're pulling cards out of a collectible card game. Essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to um, randomly select one out of your library, but you're going to assign a very specific value and log that. And that's going to be like a pending transaction, right? And it's going to have the date so that you could time it out or clean it up later. You're going to have the potential type of NFT that it is, if that matters. You're going to have the exact amount, so like 5.17325 ADA, for example. And you can do random digit generation in whatever language just to get that range. And then you're going to want to have a spot to store the sender's address, and then the NFT transaction or the asset ID. I guess the asset ID would probably be best. And you want those to be null. And then you want a flag on that table that whatever system you're making this in, you want it to be minted or not, okay, or sent or not. I guess you could say sent or not. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have a date entered, you're going to have a value entered, whatever information on that NFT entered, and then you're going to have a null or an empty blank space for the sender address because you don't know who it is yet. And you're going to have the transaction hash or the asset ID of the NFT that's minted for that person's payment. And you're going to have a status. So that status is going to be what level you're at. You could just set it as 0 for now and mark it as 1 when it's done, for example. So essentially you're going to have this timer. So let's go over this timer that we have here. So it's a new transaction timer. Check for new transactions. It queries the BlockFrost API. This does it every 30 seconds, and it's about a 24-hour history. There's a way to calculate the slots, how many slots are in a 24-hour roughly period, which is I think the maximum I would want to go back, because if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff, you don't want to be pulling so much data all the time. It would slow it down if you're doing this. Anyways, so you're going to check 24 hours in the past, and then you're going to get all those transactions, and you're going to check it with the transactions you've received. So as you're retrieving these things, you're going to be logging them into a table. So all your incoming transactions, the transaction hash, you're going to log the time that you received it and the hash. You could log other stuff that comes with that transaction data if you want. There is another query to get stuff like the fees and all the details, nitty-gritty stuff about that transaction. That's a second query. But anyway, so you're going to log as much as you can about that transaction. It's just in case you need it. If you don't need stuff, just don't log it. But you want to have the time that you received it, as well as the transaction hash. And what that lets you do is that you can pull all that table for all of the transactions you received into a query and only pull the transaction hash. So now you basically have an array of every transaction that you have, and then you can check that against all the incoming in the last 24 hours, right? When you do your queries on your table, you can also do 28 hours in the past or whatever, right? So you can pull a set amount, so you only have like 24 hours roughly of transactions, and that's from your side, and then you're pulling 24 hours from BlockFrost. So you're kind of limiting in the amount of data that you're having to parse through. So anyway, so you check for any new transactions from BlockFrost that you don't have in your transactions table. That means that everything that results out of that returns, like, it's going to be either empty if you have no new transactions, or there's going to be 1 to however many of new transactions from BlockFrost that you do not have a record of. So you need to parse these. Now there's basically 3 types that I've basically come across here, and you can kind of single it out into these 3. So you have an incoming, an outgoing, and a self-mint. And the way this looks is that if you have an incoming transaction, that means that the incoming is going to be your address, and the outgoing is going to be your address. Okay? The incoming is the person's address, the outgoing is your address, is the incoming. That means that the input is their wallet, the output is going to you. So that's an incoming. An outgoing is the input is your address, the outgoing is another person's address. That's you sending something to someone. And the self-mint is when the incoming and the outgoing addresses are both your wallet's address. So doing those checks, you can actually figure out what kind of transaction it is, and then you can handle it different ways. So for outgoing, I just log them. I just log my outgoing transactions, so I can have a record myself of how much I've sent with just a transaction. So if I need to find out more information about it, I want to do a report at some point and figure out what my fees versus incoming, all this kind of stuff, I could actually just look it up by transaction hashes. So that's what this outgoing is. It's just a log of it. The incoming is where you're going to be doing your payment checks. So someone has paid for something, you get a transaction, you're going to be checking that pending payments or whatever table for that amount. So you're going to do a payment check, and this is where you're going to do a second query regarding that transaction to a separate endpoint on BlockFrost API, and that's going to have the amounts, the fees, the sender's address, all this kind of stuff is all going to be in there. The main transaction should have the sender's address anyways, but you want to match that value to the amount in your pending, and then what you're going to do is you're going to add that sender's, if it matches, add that sender's address to your pending payment. So now you've got your date, your amount, extra information, and then the sender's is not null anymore. The NFT transaction hash or asset ID is null still because you haven't minted anything, and then your status is still like 0 for sent, right? So what you could do is, now that you've got that, you can process a mint transaction. So you could say, I've added the sender's address, mint an NFT. So then it will mint the NFT. When it mints it, it will get the transaction hash. Then you update that into the database. And so now you've got everything except for the status is still 0. And that's all you have to do. Just kind of ignore that for now. So that's how you kind of process the incoming payments, minting of it. And then the outgoing, or the minting process is the when it's going to do the actual check for sending the NFT, right? So the minting here, when you do a self mint, it means that your transaction list has said that I sent myself something, and it probably has an NFT on it because I'm not sending money to myself. So let's find out what that transaction is in our pending payments, because that transaction should be the exact same transaction ID as the one when you minted the NFT. So that means that it's come back to your wallet as confirmed, and you can now send that NFT out of your wallet because it's in your wallet synchronized on the network, technically, as far as your system's concerned. And then you can send that to the person, and you already have their address on file, so you can just mint it and send it. And that's what you do on this NFT check part. So that's kind of how the automatic process and behind the scenes would kind of go. You got this constant check for transactions, and then it's parsing the transactions from ones you already have, so it only deals with the new ones. And then depending on what kind it is, incoming, outgoing, or a self transaction, it's going to either mint an NFT and log all and change and update all that pending payment. It's just going to log an outgoing, or it's going to check and see what person you have to send that NFT, if it's a self mint, who you have to send it to, and then send the NFT off to the person. So I just want to put this out there. I don't have much time to actually stream tonight, so we've got, I might pop on a little bit later, play some games or something, but there's nothing to do really as far as the Cardano development thing here is concerned until this is done synchronizing. But I thought this would be a good topic to cover so that people who might be wanting to do something like this could get a kind of an idea of what the workflow could be for their own project. And you can change this according, but this is kind of a rough outline of kind of the workflow that you would expect. And this is using Blockfrost API. You don't have to use it. You could replace that part with anything else as long as it returns all the new all the transactions on your wallet. I just find Blockfrost is actually really nice. You get 50,000 queries for free. Doing the 30-second delay, I think we're under 5,000, right? So it's not that bad. Even after querying the transactions a second time for a new one, I don't think you would double that, right? So if you did every transaction, you got one every 30 seconds, you're now at 10,000. You still got way more headroom than you could ever ask for doing queries on their API. So unless you're going to be super popular, but by that time you're probably making enough money off of ADA to afford the extra fees for setting up and paying for their services. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's all I kind of wanted to cover in this quick live stream. I don't know if there's, let's see, is anybody actually on the chat? No one's on the chat. So this is just going to be me not wanting to upload a video and edit it. So yeah, good times, and we'll see you back when this is done actually synchronizing. So have fun.